following video represents the opinion of Mittierim and is offered for entertainment purposes only. I understand how people can get touchy with this sort of thing, but this is all in fun with no offense intended. This question comes from GM Bucky, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, from my Top 5 RPGs video. And he asks, who is the worst villain, Wizards of the Coast or Games Workshop? For those of you who don't know, Wizards of the Coast, a subsidiary of Hasbro, is the creator of Magic the Gathering, as well as the current producer of Dungeons & Dragons, now in its 5th edition. Games Workshop is an English company that produces wargaming models, and is perhaps best known for the Warhammer Miniatures wargame, as well as the Warhammer 40k game. Now, both of these companies have a long-standing tradition of serving the gaming community and providing their various products. They also have legions of loyal fans that are very dedicated to their particular products. So I certainly thought it was very interesting, this question being labeled with the assumption that these companies are villains. I think it says a lot. There's some deep psychology to pry into there, as well as long histories of various dealings with both companies to be able to form those sorts of impressions. So I definitely thought that this question would take a lot of research and a lot of focus on finding out the truth out there. Then it occurred to me that if GM Bucky wanted that, he could have done that research himself and said fuck it and made this video instead. So the first offender that we will look at is Games Workshop. There are an awful lot of complaints about this company, really stemming from lack of quality in miniatures for the price, constant price gouging, things of that nature. But you can go anywhere for that type of analysis. I want to discuss a more personal pain that I feel when I think about Games Workshop. I've been playing the Warhammer Fantasy Battles game since, give or take, high school, so 20 years on and off, and that's not a long time in terms of Games Workshop players. Many of us have been playing for decades this consistent game placed within a single world that takes a lot from the history of Earth, kind of with a little twist. So, why do I find them villains then if I've had such good long fun with that? Recently, in the last year to 2 years, Games Workshop ended that world, destroyed the game as they knew it, and completely reinvented itself. Now I know you're already all foaming at the mouth that they had to because of business dealings, but damn it, when we're talking about love and villainy, logic does not need to enter the equation. So, that being said, what did I think about these changes? I hated them across the board. I felt like something that I had beloved for a great many years had been stolen from me by these snidely whiplash bastards. Needless to say, I have not since played the game, and many out there in the world have even gone so far to object to the tyranny of Games Workshop that they doused all of their models in lighter fluid and burned them to cinders. So, my best analogy for Games Workshop, and why the case I make for them as a villain, is a very personal one, of course. They've taken the game I've loved and run off with it for someone younger. If we're going to use an analogy, they are like the ex who dumps you for somebody 10 years younger than you with a nice car and disposable income. So that is my case for Games Workshop as the ultimate villain. Let's go ahead and look at Wizards of the Coast now. Now, Wizards of the Coast's original first product was the Magic the Gathering card game, and I really hold no ill will for that card game. I still play it on occasion. Yeah, there's some craziness that's crept up here and there, but I don't follow it seriously enough to be emotionally invested. What I'm going to focus on is Wizards of the Coast and their handling of the Dungeons & Dragons IP, if you want to call it that. I had high hopes for Wizards. In the day, late 90s, we were dealing with the fallout of the close of TSR, and there were many of us who did not know if Dungeons and Dragons would continue. We clutched our second edition handbooks fearfully, not knowing what the future would hold, and like a white knight, the Wizards of the Coast appeared and purchased up our beloved TSR and supported second edition for a number of years. But what we didn't know is that deep within the heart of that twisted empire, the crab people were working on 3rd edition. 3rd edition came out to an immediate fan backlash. It lasted a very short time before they had to re-release the books as 3.5, just another money grab, or truly gamers concerned about the balance of their game. History will never know because 3rd edition sucked. In all fairness, they did save Dungeons and Dragons by turning it into something completely different. It really changed the feel of the game. There was a lot of animosity. The conversion was handled very poorly. And it really kind of split the community. Even now, you have folks like myself who still hold on and play the 2nd edition. You have old school Renaissance players who try and strive to make games that go back to that glory days. And the way I look at it is that only true villainy has that many folks who just try and escape it. Furthermore, they came on to 4th edition, which may, to my knowledge, be one of the single most reviled business moves ever. But it did succeed in uniting those of us who stayed in the old school style with those who fell in love with 3.5 in utter hatred of the 4th edition D&D. I guess maybe that was what they were aiming for. They wanted all that group to come together in some sort of peaceful union. Unfortunately, it didn't happen, caused the splinter of the game Pathfinder that the company Piazzo made, which basically is 3rd edition with less stupid. They kind of went that way, and after the horrible failing of 4th edition, came 5th edition. Now I understand there are many folks who love 5th edition. I am not going to say much about it because I don't have a lot of experience. And as you all can tell from this video, I'm not a man subject to making rash quality statements about things he has no idea about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for me personally, Dungeons & Dragons is not what I fell in love with. It's not what I wanted in a game. And so I've stayed with the old. To continue our analogy, if Games Workshop is the ex who has left you for another who is wealthier, perhaps, Games Workshop is the psycho who has abducted your wife, conducted millions of dollars in cosmetic surgery on her, and then attempts to return her to you, saying that she's just as good as she was before, even though she is, for the most part, unrecognizable, except for possibly bone structure. So that is ultimately my case of Wizards of the Coast and their villainy. So what does that all mean? Now, I hope those of you who are watching can understand from kind of my joking tone through the video up to this point that I don't really regard either of these companies as villains. Perhaps it's just my age catching up to me, but I'm finding myself somewhat less invested in this kind of argument than I might have been 10 years ago. But while I was sitting around and seriously thinking about this, I did find some interesting parallels between the quote-unquote vilification of these two companies and, frankly, how people have responded to it that I thought was very interesting. I mentioned in my little rant on Wizards that they did come out with 4th edition, and it was, for the most part, universally reviled. And they tried again with 5th edition, but what you had at that split-off was Piazzo picking up the game and continuing it in the form of Pathfinder. And it's really the first time, to my knowledge, that any sort of major company has done that with the D&D IP. I mean, they don't take a lot of the sort of, they don't call it Dungeons & Dragons, of course, but anybody who's familiar with it will be able to recognize Pathfinder as 3.5 edition D&D. So it's very interesting that they kind of had grown to the point where that change caused a split off and actually dragged away a lot of Wizards of the Coast's customer base. And I think, in all seriousness, 5th edition was an attempt to kind of drag some of those folks, plus those folks like me who have kind of dug in our heels on the old edition, forward. But it really doesn't seem to be affecting Piazzo that much. And kind of Pathfinder has turned and grown into its own thing, which I think is very interesting. In a similar vein, Games Workshop has made this change into the Age of Sigmar, and many people have embraced it. It's doing fairly well, as I understand it. But you had a lot of people who objected to it. There were some people like myself who objected to it and have pretty much just stopped playing, and now my armies are just collecting dust because I got tired of kind of the way things were going. But in a more constructive vein, you have what's called the Ninth Age. It is a group of fantasy players who decided that they were not going to allow the company to ruin what they loved and what they were enjoying out of the game as it existed, and at the same time felt that they were skilled enough to better the game and make it more balanced and make it more tournament friendly, which was ultimately what that group wanted. And they are picking up steam. Everything I've heard about that game says it's great. They really seem to have a healthy body of players, and I certainly applaud them. I certainly think it's very interesting, though, that in both cases, kind of as this sort of underground of discontent goes on, that you have viable split-off options that keeps most of what folks loved about these games going forward. And in Wizards, you kind of have it in multiple ways, because you've got the Pathfinder split-off, and more recently, you've got the what's the OSR, the Old School Renaissance split-off, where you've got individual game designers making game systems that more resemble the first and second editions of D&D, and even basic D&D. So for me, it's interesting. I don't know that I would call them villains. I certainly think they're obviously making business decisions as they want to, and they're totally right in doing that and making money. But what I love is that their business decisions have caused a spread in the offerings available. And I really do think, with the way kind of the products of both companies have gone, that there's stuff out there for everyone to enjoy. So other than kind of for some joking in the first half of this video, I'm not really going to call anyone villains. I don't really play games from either company anymore. I mean, I play Magic occasionally, mainly with cards I still have from 10 years ago, but I've stopped playing Games Workshop, so I don't really think either of them are guilty of villainy. They're guilty of doing what they have to do for their customers, and luckily they have allowed for the spread of good gaming, so I can't really hold anything against them. So all in all, thank you, GM Bucky, and the no doubt hundreds of people who are going to watch the first half of this video instantly give me a downvote and totally ruin my analytics on YouTube. That should be fun to watch. So if you guys like this video, please like and subscribe. This is kind of the first of these response videos I do, but who knows, maybe I'll get more interesting responses and keep it going in the future. Otherwise, thanks for watching again, and we'll catch you next time.